Okay. So, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us here at the monthly San Francisco General Wellness Center's cooking demo. Um, we meet here on the fourth Thursday of every month, as you know, and it looks like we'll be meeting on Zoom for at least the rest of this year. So that's something you can mark in your calendars if you want to join us on the fourth Thursday at noon. We'll be here doing it until further notice, until we get really clearance on being able to meet each other again in person. So today, what I wanted to do were two different recipes. We do a lot of plant-based recipes here at the Wellness Center because vegetables are, we all know, are, everybody says eat your vegetables, eat your fruits, and so forth, and we know that they're real key to health and to helping combat some of the diseases sort of a modern standard American diet, and a diet that's been highly refined and processed. And in my years of teaching, what I've discovered is that the things that people have the biggest challenges with when they're working with vegetables or plant-based ingredients is making them taste good. So when we do these classes, I strive to create a learning environment, I guess, that's got flexibility to it, and helps to build confidence about how you can develop flavor, and what sort of are the steps or what the techniques are behind what we're doing when we're cooking something or not cooking it, that helps to enhance the flavor a little bit. Because even fruits and vegetables, even though they're universally agreed to be great foods for us, they're not if they don't taste good to you, so there is the mind part that says, these are good for you, they have a lot of nutrition, but then there's also the emotion part, the heart, the soul part that says, I like this, I want it, I want more of it, I want to go towards it and eat something. So I try to address that level as well in the cooking, to make it simple, fast, accessible, versatile, flexible, and so forth. So today we're doing two recipes. I call them both transition recipes. We here, all of us that are local here know that over the weekend we had like this amazing weather. It was almost 90 here where I live, and then today I feel like if I were need to go outside, I'd need to wear a sweater and a coat and a jacket, and because it's super windy and super foggy. So we're going to do a warm dish today, and we're also going to do a variation on a cold dish, a slaw, as we enter into kind of more springtime. All right, so we're gonna make this. I think everybody has the recipes. We're gonna do a Spanish style cauliflower rice and a cabbage slaw with fresh strawberries and a yogurt poppy seed dressing. So I want to get started on the onions. It's just warming up the pan here. I get anxious, and sometimes I make my pan too hot. That's actually not really a very good idea. On a stainless steel pan, you can put it on the heat without any oil in there. But to tell you the truth, I don't know hardly any ingredient that likes to go into a scorching hot pan, unless you're like doing a blackened fish or something where you really want a nice hard sear on it. Most ingredients, especially plant-based ones, end up getting a little bit bitter and burnt tasting, and it's hard to get rid of that once that happens. So in my eagerness, I have to just tell myself also, don't make your pan screaming hot. There's a way to walk in between the line of it. So I've got it warming, and you notice on this particular pan, I warmed it up first, and then I'm going to go in with my oil. The other ingredient that doesn't like to be hugely exposed to high heat for a long period of time is any kind of fat. We're using extra virgin olive oil, and that doesn't have, the smoke point on that is about 375 degrees. So the longer an oil or a fat source stays on heat, depending on what its smoke point is, the more easily it can become damaged. And so when we take in a lot of damaged fats, which is common in processed foods and hydrogenated foods and things like that, they create inflammation in the body, which then sets off this whole cascade of issues of potentially further down the line with heart disease or diabetes or, joint pain and things like that. So I've got my pan going. I'm going to go ahead and add my oil now so I can start my onions. This is the Spanish rice. I'm not measuring it. I'm just kind of guessing what it looks right. This is the Spanish rice recipe. So I've got the oil in the pan. And since we've preheated this, we can already begin seeing the oil start to shimmer a little bit like a mirage on a hot day, the road. So you can see it beginning to shimmer. And I can smell it as well. So I've got about a cup of onions here. I already diced them. I'm going to go put them in the pan. Can you hear that? That means our pan is at a good temperature. We'll let those guys do their thing for a while there. And at this level, I like to put in a pinch of salt. What the salt is doing here is bringing out flavor that's closed up inside the cells of the onions. So when we add the salt, it starts drawing those flavor compounds out so that they can start infusing into the flavor base, basically, which is what we're doing. You almost always start with onions by themselves. Sometimes I give them a little head start, 2 or 3 minutes, and then I add in other things, like if I'm going to use carrots or celery, then I can pop those guys in. But I like to get onions going on their own. Let's see what happens if I move it to 4. Oops, too many. Onions doing it on their own because, like last time, those of you that were here, we know that onions, as you cook with them, if you cook with them slowly and over a period of time, what begins happening is this process called caramelization. And then there's all these different flavor compounds that are created during that wait time. So a lot of times I get them going and then I move on to something else. And you just have to come back and give them a stir every once in a while. It's all those flavor compounds which turn out to be, we can't even really detect them often in the final product, but that adds sort of interest and complexity to a flavor that's really determined simply because of the way we cooked it. All right, so while they're going, I'm going to start working on another onion, which is for the other recipe. This is a red onion. It's so beautiful. There's something about red onions, I think, that is just amazing. So beautiful. We've also talked in previous classes about the way you slice an onion. This red onion is going to go in our cabbage slaw. So we made a distinction between a sauté slice, which is what's called pole to pole. So the root end, the flower end. Those are good for when you're cooking like in a stir fry or something. They hold up a little bit better to cooking. And one second here, let me turn this down. To cooking, so they hold their texture and they just cook differently. We're going to do a salad slice today, which is preferred when you're doing it in a raw preparation. Whether you cut it this way or not really isn't going to matter. But I thought it's an interesting point to note. So we're going to cut across the equator this way, this time. And I'm going to do them thinly. I don't know. I mean, I like onions. It took me a while to really like them. But what I don't like are too big of onions and too large of a chunk of onions. It just overtakes whatever is being, whatever they're going with. And since we're doing it raw today, I want them quieter, I guess. Not so oniony. All right. Trying to make these thin. It's going to look pretty in the green cabbage. What do I need? Half of one. Half of one seems like it might be a lot. But onions are very good food because they have like the cabbage that we're going to be using, and I'll talk about in a little bit. They have some strong anti-cancer properties and anti-inflammatory properties. They have some natural antioxidants in there, which makes them also helpful on many levels, but one way particularly is for allergies, like seasonal allergies. Okay, so we have our onions. Let me look at my cabbage. Hey, let me do one more. Here's a little trick you can do with onions if you're not keen on the flavor of them raw. You can, at this point, what I could do is do a quick soak on them and put them in a bowl with some warm water and about a teaspoon of vinegar. It could be rice vinegar, it could be apple cider vinegar, it could be lemon juice, some sort of acid source, and just let them hang out in there for a while, and that causes them to back up a little bit with their flavor. So it might be a way that's a little more palatable for you or the people you're cooking for. Might enjoy it a little bit better, and you still get the health benefits of them, the vitamin C, the fiber, the phytonutrients and things that are in there. Today I'm just going to go for it and go in here with the cabbage. This is just a green cabbage. It would be really pretty with red cabbage as well. So these guys are in there. Let's cut the rest of the cabbage. You can do this with your knife. I find it kind of satisfying to do with a knife because it gives a nice kind of, resistance back, I guess, to the knife. It just feels feels interactive. You could also just shred it on a box grater if you wanted, or throw it in the food processor if you have that. So I'm just going to run the knife through here fairly thinly. I'm cutting them crosswise because that way they'll be more comfortable on your fork. You know, they're not going to be super long and stringy. Oh, hold on a sec. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Oh, hi Letty, welcome. Can you type in the chat where you're joining from, and are you part of Dr. Ziletta's group, or are you Wellness Center? And then I can answer your question better. Okay. Okay, so the onions are coming along. I'll just finish cutting this. Cabbage, you do have to cut sort of small or thinly because it's a little harder to work with when it's raw, which is why you almost always see it in some sort of heavy dressing or marinade, whether it's like a typical coleslaw with mayo or with a acidic type of vinaigrette on there. And what the job of the dressing is doing is it's helping to basically break down the cell walls in the cabbage and make it more tender and therefore easier to digest. The first part of the breakdown with any ingredient is the cutting, the size that you cut. Yeah. All right, so I am going to pause on that for a second. These onions are looking great. They're nice and caramelized. Let me check that chat real quick. Oh, we found it on our Eventbrite. Oh, no, it's not a closed group. Welcome. I'm really excited you found it. Do me a favor. Maybe Krista, would you, Catherine at the caregivers table is my email. Why don't you send me an email with your information and I'll send you the recipes. Great, Hawaii, I love it. All right, so here our onions are good. We're gonna go in and add the next layer of flavor in here, which is our spices and our garlic. We're doing a kind of a knockoff on Spanish rice. So I'm going for those flavor profiles here. I've got some chili powder here. We're gonna add half a teaspoon. You can see, here we go. And then a key ingredient in Spanish rice is paprika. So I'm going to add a teaspoon of paprika. You could also add smoked paprika if you liked for that smoky element. What the chili powder is doing is providing kind of a depth and a smokiness that you normally find in Spanish rice. But we are going to use the paprika and the chili for that. And then I have one more ingredient I'm going to show you in a while that also enhances that smoky flavor. And our garlic can go in. We're going to cook these for just a moment until they begin to smell, have a release a scent. This is another reason why we don't want our pan screaming hot. When garlic hits the pan and it's too hot, it definitely burns and tastes bad. It's bitter. You can't really undo it. But it smells great on my side. All right, so those items are in. And here we're going to add some cauliflower. What I did was took it. Oh, one moment. Oh, Krista, thank you. Great. I took a head of cauliflower, a half a head. I ended up cutting it in my food processor. That was a really fast way to go. You don't have to do this. You can do it with a knife. And you can also, it's kind of a good meditation actually, because you just like chop, 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 and chop. And the good news is that cauliflower has become such a common ingredient now. It's available fairly widely in pre-riced form. So I normally get the ones that are frozen if I'm going to buy it, and just keep it there and then throw it into things. So it's a time-saving step. And the truth is, we could all use some time saving. Oftentimes, time is the deal breaker for people when it comes to cooking in a health supportive way. So we have our cauliflower in there, and at this point I'm going to add some salt and pepper. Don't even know if I'm following the recipe. I'm just going on instinct here. I'm going to add about a half a teaspoon of salt. Again, the salt's job is to help draw out some flavors that are in the cauliflower. Let's put it here because I know I'll need it again. A few grinds of pepper. You could, again, not measuring it. You could get it, the pre-ground and just put in about a quarter teaspoon. Oftentimes that relationship is double the amount of salt than the pepper. So there are some exceptions, which we will see in the dressing. Now we need some fluid in here. I have some stock that I make with vegetable skins. I'm going to add a little bit of that. But before I add all of it, it's about a cup is what the recipe says. I'm going to add about a half a cup now, because I also have the juice in the tomatoes. These are, I didn't have, the recipe says canned tomatoes. I didn't have those yesterday, but I had a can of fire roasted ones. So I'm using that because I figured it would match well with this flavor profile anyway. There's some depth and some smokiness there. Great, okay. All right. But there's also liquid. So we don't want it to be too wet. And what the liquid is doing here is it's somewhat steaming. Pan has ended up getting pretty full. This is a recipe I developed for a cookbook author colleague of mine, and why these cauliflower recipes are becoming so popular is because all the problems that are showing up in our culture now with blood sugar regulation or dysregulation, actually, and people wanting to do a lower, kind of a lower carb lifestyle, lower refined carbohydrate. These are all carbohydrates, but they're complex carbohydrates. And a cup of cauliflower has, when it's cooked, has about, I think, 25 or 30 calories in it, and 3 grams of fiber. 3 grams of carbohydrate, 2 of which are of fiber, so the net grams is only 1. But a cup of white rice has about 200 calories with a carbohydrate content or count of about 30 grams, of which they're all metabolized quite quickly into their basic sugar units, and they can cause a spike in the blood pressure, or the blood sugar. So we're always looking for ways to make variations here that sort of, address our desire as humans for favorite foods, but makes it in a more health supportive way. All right, so this looks like it's got, you know what, I'm going to add a little bit more liquid here. We have a lot of liquid, but I don't want it to scorch. This is the broth I make with scraps, basically. One day we should do a whole class on that, on soups. Maybe I'll do an anatomy of a soup class that I have. Okay, so we're going to let that cook. I'm going to cover it and let that cook for about another 7 minutes or so. Let me just double check. I know I need to put some fresh oregano in there. Yeah, we're good. My board is a little full, so let me go in the, whoops. Okay, that, way. Okay, so the Spanish rice recipe also calls for oregano, about 2 tablespoons of fresh oregano. We happen to have it growing in our garden, so that's a plus for us. If you don't have oregano available, or you don't want to buy one whole bundle of it for just this recipe, use dried. You can use, let's see, the equivalent would be about, instead of 2 tablespoons, 2 teaspoons of dried. So rule of thumb, you want to triple the amount of fresh herb to dried herb, or reduce it by 2/3 if you're using dried. I know that probably didn't make sense. Let's go back. Let's do our math on this. So in a tablespoon, there are 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon. And we're going to use 2 tablespoons of fresh herb here, which is 6 teaspoons, right? So if we want to divide that, if we don't have fresh and we want to go with dry, we just divide it by 3 and we get 2 teaspoons. Hope that made sense. This is how I like to strip the herbs. Oregano is very assertive. It's got like a lot of, it doesn't like to be pushed around a whole lot, so it can stand on its own in this kind of sort of bold flavor profile we're creating. You notice I'm hanging on to the stems. I like to make a tea out of these stems. You just bruise them up and then throw them in a pot of water with a couple of cups of water. It makes a really nice, soothing tea, and particularly if you're feeling a little under the weather. Oil of oregano has been used a lot in folk medicine for any kind of bacterial things in the throat, like sore throats, feeling a little bit off, even GI stuff, because it has some natural anti-bad guy bugs present in it naturally. And it makes a very delicious tea as well. Hang on to those. Put in there with a little bit of lemon and honey, and it's delicious. I call these the bouncy herbs. Any of these fluffy ones, like cilantro or parsley or mint, oregano in this case, those leafy ones, because they like to bounce around my board. So what you have to do, hopefully you can see that, what you have to do is gather them up into a pile and run your knife through there so you can kind of get a handful of them. Okay. So those are going to go in now also. Let's see this one and give it a stir. That's looking pretty good. Gosh, I wish you guys could taste this. What we're doing here basically is just cooking the cauliflower, making it soft. All right, that looks good. Oh, here's a little bit more. And then we'll throw in the oregano. Oregano is one of those herbs because, like I told you earlier, it's a little bit, it's assertive. It's able to stand up on its own. So you can add it earlier in the cooking process than you would other fresh herbs like parsley, the other soft herbs like parsley or things like that. When you add those too early in the cooking process, they lose their punch. I'm wondering if whoever got working on something that could mute that maybe. Awesome. Actually, maybe everybody could mute for now. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Let's see. Oh, it might be Pixel. All right. Okay, so that's simmering away there, and I'm going to move back to the poppy seed dressing. This is a cup of yogurt. It's a Greek yogurt that has, I use a low fat one. And then we're going to add our typical ingredients. Normal poppy seed dressing that you might buy in a jar that you might make. I'm wondering, can everybody mute? Somebody's so busy they can't, I don't think they heard me. Oh, that'd be great. Thanks. So normal poppy seed dressing has about anywhere from a quarter to a half a cup of sugar in it, which is a lot. It often has either milk or mayonnaise or, but basically it's sort of the same ingredients, apple cider vinegar and things. Mayonnaise is not inherently necessarily a bad ingredient when it's used when you break down the ingredients themselves. Usually it's oil of some sort, eggs, mustard, and some other things, all whipped, and maybe a tiny bit of sweetness in there, all whipped together to emulsify it. But the problem comes when commercial mayonnaises are often done in huge batches, and they also use poor quality ingredients. So they use oils that are saturated or partially saturated or not, they're kind of more pro-inflammatory oils. And that can cause a little bit more problem in the body. In this case, we're not really using that much, and this is a cup. A cup of mayo is kind of a lot, but it's spread over a large distance, basically. But I like to just sort of introduce equivalents, like things you can use that makes it a little bit more health supportive. So here we have a whole food in the sense of the yogurt, and we also have the beneficial bacteria in the yogurt, which is also very, very helpful for the gut. So we have our yogurt in there, and then we're going to add some acid source. In this case, we're going to use apple cider vinegar. I like to use a raw apple cider vinegar because, again, it's a fermented product. Our body recognizes it, and the health properties that are natural in there are preserved. They're not exposed to heat. So any of the natural bacteria that's here that helps support gut health is still intact. So we have a couple tablespoons. here. We're going to use some honey. I like to use raw honey. Any kind of sweet source, the best quality you can get is what you should go for. If what you have is white sugar, that's what you have. I mean, but if you just sort of having the understanding that if you could find a higher quality one that's been less refined or less processed, it's really the head of the game, better the head of the game you are. This has got a tablespoon of honey in it. And I'm saying that for people who have to watch their simple sugar intake. Most of us, who aren't working with sugar dysregulation, can just go ahead and use this without any kind of problem. Might need to add more. We'll see. This is a tablespoon of poppy seeds. It's very big. And here we need some salt and pepper, then a little bit of olive oil. So I'll go ahead and just grind it in there. You can always add more. I like the fresh ground pepper. It's got a nice kick to it. And a half a teaspoon of salt. This is a sea salt, which I like to use. It's better. It has the minerals are still intact in there, so it's got just sort of a more complex, interesting flavor. And again, it's less refined. Right, cauliflower rice is coming along well. What we're going to do is keep cooking this, and then take the top off and let it evaporate. Anything that's left in there, any fluid that's left in there, evaporate, and then we'll add some olives, some green olives. Okay. So all of our ingredients for the dressing are in there. Sometimes I forget. Sorry, so I have to refer to this recipe. You can just stir it together or whisk it together. This actually it'll last in the refrigerator for about a week, and it actually makes kind of a nice dip also. Not so much maybe for carrots and whatnot, celery, but it works really well for strawberries or other fruits in there. Because it's a little bit sweet, sweeter than some of my other yogurt-based dressings. But you could mix in, take out the poppy seeds. I think it's in the notes there on the recipe, and put in other things like curry, a half a teaspoon of curry powder. That is really lovely. The other thing that would work in here would be cinnamon, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, or cardamom, just for some unique, some variation. And we all know that curry powder has just loaded with antioxidants. One of the recipes I have for my cabbage slaw is got a curried yogurt dressing, and it's a take on the Waldorf salad. It's actually quite good with some walnuts, apples, and raisins in there. I'm going to taste this for balance. You want it to be, it's really good. It's really bright. It's a bit acidic from the yogurt and the vinegar, but it's good that way. So I need to put a little oil in there. Okay. What do I need? 2 to 3. So you notice the recipes always have a range on there. Use your own judgment and your own taste. Like what tastes good for you. Let's start with 2 and then see what happens. So you'll notice the ingredients that are in here I also previously listed when I'm talking about mayonnaise, except for that there's no egg. So you have a fat source, an acid source, They have mustard, which they're using as a binder, and then typically in a little bit of, just a tiny bit of sweetener in mayonnaise. Depends, I guess, on what kind. We grew up with not Best Foods, the other one, Miracle Whip. That one was much sweeter. Hold on, I'm gonna come see this chat. Oh, great, great, great. Yeah, thank you for directing them to the Facebook page. Can you cook the rice recipe in a rice cooker? I don't know why not. I think it wouldn't take very long. Oh, and I can mute the things. um, one moment. Thanks for that reminder. Okay. Yeah, thanks for reminding me about the rice cooker thing. I don't own one of those, so to be honest, I don't know how long it would take, but I can't imagine it taking very long because even on the stovetop, it only takes about 10 minutes at the most. So I would imagine you could start with that and, uh, and just go from there. I'm feeling this rice as I'm stirring it, and it still feels a little bit hard. You're getting a lot of information through the body when we cook. We just aren't always aware of it. But I can feel that it feels raw still. Sometimes you notice that when you're stirring lentils or beans or something, they can still feel a little bit, uh, well, hard, like little pebbles or something. So I'm gonna let that keep going. But the water in there is looking good. What the fluid is going to do ultimately is it's going to kind of glaze these vegetables that are in there, and all together it's creating a really nice, not really a sauce, but a nice flavor base that's being infused into that cauliflower. But somebody asked about the rice cooker, and it reminded me of cooking techniques with cauliflower. I call it a template food because it's kind of cooperative. It's pretty much willing to do anything, anywhere you want to go with it. It's willing to go. This dressing is excellent. Oh yeah, it's really spicy and not spicy hot, but spicy and great. I'm sorry, I know I'm jumping around a lot, but I wanted to get this dressing on there. I'm going to add about half of it and toss it around, and then that is going to get marinating with these items that are already in the bowl, which is the cauliflower, the cabbage and the onions. But back to cauliflower for a minute. You can pretty much do anything with cauliflower that you could do with a potato. So you can obviously steam it. You can roast it. You can boil it. You can mash it. You can puree it. I mean, it just does a lot. You can grill it. It's very, I guess I call it amenable. It's like it's cooperative. And it also is very accepting of different flavor profiles. So you can, whatever flavors you enjoy eating, if you like Latin flavors, if you like Caribbean flavors, if you like Indian flavors, if you like Middle Eastern flavors, if you like Mediterranean flavors, it will accept all of those, herbs and spices that help take it in that direction. I'm going to show you this as soon as I spin it around a little bit more. All right, I also want to put that back in my hair. See how nice that looks? Yeah, so that's going to start wilting down a little bit. The acid, the salt in the dressing and the yogurt from the yogurt, the apple cider vinegar, and the salt is going to start breaking down those cells again a little bit in the cabbage. And then we'll check it later and add more dressing if we need to. Let's check on our cauliflower. Oh, now it's starting to get there. This would be so good under a piece of chicken or something, or even just shredded chicken added in. And then you have a kind of a meal in a pot, basically. Let's see where we are flavor-wise, or tenderness-wise. I'm going to keep the lid on a little bit more. It has a good flavor though. And then we're going to finish it with a little bit of lemon juice. I really like the cruciferous vegetables, and we have them featured here. We have the cabbage and we have the cauliflower. I mentioned earlier with the cauliflower that the caloric content is very, low on it. There's fiber in there, but the cruciferous vegetable family are real powerhouses when it comes to fighting inflammation in the body and providing like the antioxidant nutrients that fight inflammation. So I call them the powerhouse, one of the heavy hitters. I almost always use some sort of crucifer, and the family is huge. I mean, Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi, cabbage, broccoli, everything. There's leafy, even arugula is a brassica crucifer type family member. You get a lot of bang for your buck in there, not just the flavor, but the nutrient potency of them is very, very high. So they are used, helpful for people who are having any kind of health concerns like heart disease, weight management, blood sugar. It helps to stay, because of their fiber content as well, it helps to kind of give you that feeling of fullness for very low caloric intake. So they're satisfying that way. And they're used a lot in, traditional healing cultures for cancer treatment as well. Their phytonutrients in there have been shown to really impact the way that the DNA, the genes are expressed. So they can be helpful in cancer as well. And in terms of cabbage, this is both, the cruciferous in general. The cabbage used to be in folk medicine a way, and in traditional healing models, the treatment for a lot of GI distress or any sort of intestinal discomfort. There's a compound in cabbage that's called glutamine. It's an amino acid. It's a tiny little amino acid. And what it does is it does a lot of things, but one thing that it does is it helps to stimulate repair of like mucous membrane linings. So if a person's got ulcers, for instance, in the stomach, a traditional remedy for that was cabbage juice, basically, so that the juice could start doing repair in the gut. I like that type of thing. So my goal is always to, like, how do we understand what the therapeutic properties of a food and ingredient are, and then make it so that it's suitable and tasty for our lifestyle. It makes us really want to eat it. And I mean lifestyle in terms of budget, time, and flavor preferences, and family. You got to work with your family too. Sometimes people are turn their noses up at vegetables. My dad was one of those people. All right, so that's about done. Actually, I'm going to take the top off of that and let it continue to evaporate. And then we're going to look at our salad here. So we have a lot of vitamin C in this salad. Onions and the cabbage are very high vitamin C sources. What vitamin C does is let me back up one second. Vitamin C can also be susceptible to cooking techniques, and so it doesn't, it can get deactivated basically with cooking, but in raw, it's still intact. And one of the things that vitamin C does is it helps the integrity of our blood vessels. So we're hearing a little bit about, blood vessel integrity right now, with all of the COVID and things, and vitamin C helps to maintain the collagen and the things that keeps the blood vessels healthy, essentially, and less of a target. It's an antioxidant nutrient, so less of a target for inflammation and therefore damage. All right. This is looking pretty good, smelling delicious. And all that water is beginning to evaporate, and all that liquid is beginning to evaporate. So here, we're going to add some fresh strawberries, another great seasonal vitamin C source. These are organic strawberries. I like to get organic berries when, uh, and local berries, which where we are currently, they're all coming into season right now. One reason is because they're high pesticide residue food. They're kind of constantly up on the environmental working groups top dirty dozen list. Let me see. Oh, great. Okay. Thank you, Eileen. So in go the strawberries. It's going to start looking really pretty. You could use other fruits here too. This would work really nicely with peaches when they come in, or nectarines, or red grapes. All of those would work. I could see that the variation using the curry, and it's on the bottom of your recipe, with the peach or a nectarine or even a plum. I think like any kind of stone fruit would be a really nice combination here. All you would do would be to omit the poppy seeds and replace it with the curry spice. I think it's a half a teaspoon there on your recipe. I'm gonna add just a little more. One great thing about this type of salad, when you use cabbage as the base, it could be this kind of green, it could be red as I mentioned, or Savoy cabbage, is that it holds just fine in the refrigerator. So it actually gets a little better because it just gets a little softer, but without getting watery. And I think it makes it a good potluck food also for that reason. Okay, and then we're going to throw in a little crunchy element. In this case, we're using almonds. I toasted the almonds. Use the what we know about heat and how it helps to brown, and how browning and toasting, caramelizing helps enhance flavors. So I got a half of a cup of slivered almonds here. They also add crunchy texture. You could add any kind of nut really if you wanted. If you don't have almonds, you could use walnuts or pecans, or I don't know why you couldn't even use pine nuts if you wanted. Even a seed like sunflower seed or pumpkin would work. And this recipe is done. I'm going to put some in a little bowl. And then my taster can come over. I want to show you all. Let me give this a little stir first. Yep, this is evaporating really nicely. I have a cauliflower rice recipe of fried rice with a lot of vegetables in it. It's like a fried rice. It has egg and a lot of vegetables and stuff in it. And then a Thai version of it also, which is really, really nice. But you can see, hopefully, that is ready to go. I'm going to go, I'll stay on the speaker for a minute. So that is ready. Maybe I should try it myself first. Use this one. Pretty good. Yep. Yep. I like it. It's nice and tart. And like a lot of things, especially these with the sturdier vegetables, it will over time begin to integrate more. Right now, I'm tasting in my mouth the onions. They all taste delicious, but the onions are kind of tasting separately from the cabbage, which is tasting separately from the dressing. So this is a great make-ahead dish if you have a little time. Then it gives it a chance for everybody to kind of hang out together, and then we kind of create an orchestra rather than a bunch of individual players. It still tastes really nice the way it is. All right, let me check on this guy. Over here. Oh, hot. It's really good. I'm gonna go ahead and just turn it down. And then we go in here with some sliced olives. You don't have to do this step if you don't like it, but I got some pimento olives. This is kind of a typical, Spanish rice profile. Well, actually, typical Spanish rice often doesn't have olives in it. You could use, instead of tomatoes, you could use roasted pepper, red pepper. That would be nice as well. Lucien, do you want to come over? Well, then let me show you this. I'm fortunate to have a neighbor across the way who can test this stuff out. Here is the rice. Oh, good. Here she comes. Thanks for hanging in with our low tech situation here. It's all very. Hey, there you are. You can leave that open if you want. It's pretty hot. This is Lucian. Yeah. You can say hi if you want. Here, I don't know which one you want first, but there's this.
Maybe that first.
Okay, and there's the. I'm going to turn this off. So she's going to taste that and then give us her feedback on it. Oh, you can go anywhere. Sorry about the clutter. Let's go off here. But let me.
I should have brought a fork.
Oh, didn't I just give you one?
No.
Oh, I thought I did. Oh, here it is.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and turn the computer a little bit so I can answer any questions you may have. Hold on a second. Aw, thanks. I'm glad it looks good. We do have some time here if anybody wants to unmute. Let me think. I think you can do that. Yep, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, or I can do it as the host. If you have any questions, and it doesn't have to be about this. It could be about anything, really. Because what I've found is that we all learn a lot from each other as well. Change the view here, gallery. One second, let's call the unmute. Also want you to hear if I always know we did well if I can hear her spontaneous little over on it. Yeah?
It's wonderful.
You like it?
I don't remember you putting salt in it. Did you?
I did.
Yeah.
Does it need more?
For me, but I'm overly salty.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's necessarily. I mean, Lucien brings up a good point. Is that, I mean, in this whole recipe, there's a half of a teaspoon of salt, I think. Let me just double check. This is what she's eating is the slaw. Yeah, a half a teaspoon of salt. This is just for perspective here. So a half of a teaspoon of salt is about 1,200 milligrams of salt. I'm doing it from the science side and then from the taste side. So it's about 1,200 milligrams of salt divided by 4, of which this is supposedly serving, which almost looks like more, is about 300 milligrams of sodium per serving, which is really considered low sodium when you think about it and compare it to foods that are more, or pre-made foods that are already processed. Here's the salt, and Lucien is probably right. It may need a little more. Oh, was it salt in the, you mean for the?
I meant it for the salad.
Oh, she meant it for the salad. Here's a little bit more. So what salt does is it lifts flavors and it makes it more, it takes it from bland to just elevates the flavors, and it helps to integrate them more without making it salty. We're not aiming for making something salty. Right. What we're doing is working with the inherent tendency or nature of each ingredient and pulling out the best of it, and then just using salt as a tool rather than as a flavor. Processed foods obviously have a lot of salt because all their natural flavors have been processed out. So they don't retain them anymore. So we tend to reach for salt or reach for spices in order to create a good experience that way, flavor-wise. How's that one?
The olives provide a good salt here.
Yeah. So she's tasting the cauliflower now, and the olives do add a salt element to it. Capers could also work. They're a little fancy. They're not in everybody's pantry. So,
It's scrumptious.
She loves it. Yay. Are there any questions? All right. All right. Well, thank you all for coming, and I hope you try these recipes. You're always welcome to. Let me put my email in the chat, and I'm not. I do this so that I can be of service rather than I'm not promoting anything. You're always welcome to call me or email me with any questions you might have. Cooking questions or recipe questions. Say you're reading it, it's not making sense. Feel free to reach out. It's really, really fine because my wish is that everybody, tries some of these things and starts to expand their range a little bit in the kitchen. All right. Oh, somebody wanted to know what the Facebook page is. There we go. Oh gosh, thank you, Krista. You guys are so fast on it. Yeah, Lisa Lee, are you from? Are you the one that was in Hawaii? No. Oh, where are you located? I wish. Good answer. Are you with Dr. Zaletta's group? Oh, San Francisco. Great. Great. Oh, whoops. I sent the email to Sana. Sorry about that. Here, let me put my email in there again. This is why I'm a cook, not a tech person. I'm clumsy here, as you can see. uh, oh, great. Oh, great. Good. I hope this is helpful for your folks. Let me see. Did I do it correctly that time? Okay, good. All right, everyone. Well, we're here the fourth Thursday of every month. I don't have my calendar right in front of me, but you'll have to you can count. And from 12 to 1, and we'll see you next month. All right. Thanks so much. Oh, let's see. Is it the same link? I'm not sure. Lisa Lee, do you mean is it the same link as the Facebook page? Oh, yes, 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 yes. Thank you. Yes, it's the same link every time for Zoom. Yep. Yeah. Okay. All right, everyone. Be well.